Welcome to Season 2 of the SOAR podcast, the place for creative entrepreneurs who want to build healthier, happier, more profitable self-employed businesses. I'm your host, Ray Hyde Cornell, business mentor at Chiron Consulting and CEO and senior copywriter at Cornell Content Marketing. Get ready to soar. Welcome to the SOAR podcast. Today's episode number 64, is actually based on a request from a member of our Chiron community in Slack. So one of our members recently asked me, how do I know the difference between burnout, depression, and just the fact that maybe I'm doing some unfulfilling work? Maybe I'm not doing the right thing in my business. And this is a really important question to ask because a lot of us get into freelancing and running our own businesses because we do struggle with some mental health issues, whether it's depression, anxiety, PTSD, whatever the case may be. That's often something that's already prevalent in our lives or has at least some form of presence. And so we want to make sure that as we're building our businesses and progressing along, we're not confusing depression, burnout, which is a very different thing entirely, and just not doing the right things in your business that are going to energize you and fill you up. So let's dive into it, starting with burnout. What is burnout? Burnout is particularly specific to work, but it tends to seep into other areas of our lives. So when we're dealing with burnout, usually we feel tired, not passionate, and like we don't even want to go near our computer, cell phone, inbox, anything digital like that, particularly when we're working in the digital world. Now, this may show up differently for you if you run a brick and mortar business or if you do in-person work like photography, things like that. But for the most part, if you're running an online business, this is where you kind of just withdraw from that online world. You don't want to talk to anybody you work with. You don't really care what your clients are asking you, and you just feel unenthused, and you can tell that it's tied to your work. Now, burnout in particular tends to happen when we're not pricing ourselves correctly, when we're lowballing our rates and we're taking on absolutely any work just to kind of meet ends meet, or because we don't want to say no. We kind of tend to have that scarcity mindset. We're not valuing the service that we have to offer as well as we should. So we fall into patterns that overwork ourselves. Burnout also tends to happen when we don't believe that we're allowed to take a break, or that we believe that we have to work as much as a traditional W-2 employee. So if you've been an employee before and you've been required to show up at work at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., something like that, they tell you when you can take your lunch, they tell you when you can clock out, all of that. And then you go into running your own business. If you try to force yourself into that same mold or something similar where you think, oh, I'm supposed to work 8 hours a day, or, oh, let me start work first thing in the morning and then work some more in the afternoon. And my only real time for myself is if I wake up before the sun is even up, or if I take a lunch break and I have dinner. If you are trying to fold yourself into that same mold, you're likely going to hit burnout. So if you're struggling with the same question of, what am I feeling right now? Is it burnout? Is it depression? Am I just not loving the type of work I'm doing? Ask yourself first, where is this feeling coming from? Are you feeling it specific to your work, or are you feeling it in any other areas of your life? And if you think about the symptoms that you're feeling, the tiredness, the lack of passion, the withdrawnness, think about it in the context of, if I wasn't doing the work I'm doing, would I still feel this way? Now, if you've identified that really it is burnout, then usually burnout is fixed by either taking an extended break or a complete break, or drastically scaling back while actively fixing the problems that led to burnout in the first place. So again, this all relates to work, and we'll talk about some non-work related things here in a minute. But with burnout in particular, you need to take a step back. You need to reevaluate, because burnout means you cannot keep going at this pace or in this direction any longer. This is not working for you. Your energy is going in a different direction and you're trying to force it in an opposite direction. That's burnout. You need to pause. You need to take a step back, and you need to proactively and objectively look at your business. This is not a time to be critical of yourself. Oh, why couldn't I just do it? Why aren't I tough enough? Why don't I have the stamina? Why don't I have the endurance? It has nothing to do with that. It just means that what you're doing in your business and your way of working is not working for you. And most likely you're holding yourself to standards and expectations that you would never expect anyone else to try to meet. So take that break, take a step back. If you need help, talk to a friend, talk to a colleague, talk to someone in the online business world who you respect, and have them look at your business. Tell them what you're doing. Tell them what you're experiencing, what you're feeling, what this has been like for you, how long you've been feeling this way. And most likely, the fixes are going to come down to your pricing, your schedule, or your clientele. Now let's talk about the next one, depression. When you're experiencing depression, your mood, your energy, your interest in things, your passion, all of it is low, and it's not specific to anything at all. Depression typically affects anything and everything. It affects how you feel at work. It affects how you feel in relationships. It affects how you feel in your family. It affects how you engage in or don't in your hobbies and interests. When you are experiencing clinical depression, and let me distinguish these here for a second. Clinical depression is something where symptoms show up for a long period of time. They're pervasive, and they are typically due to a chemical imbalance in the brain. Then there is kind of like this situational thing that happens where, something happens in our lives, and then one day we go, man, I think I'm depressed. You may not be saying that you are clinically depressed. You may not be saying that you have clinical depression, but in that moment, you are feeling depressed. And let me give you an example. When my husband and I first moved from San Diego to Lubbock, Texas, we were trying to get used to the town. We were driving around and we were both getting so frustrated because the way the streets are designed here, the way intersections are laid out, they have these weird turnaround things. They have just the whole city was foreign to us. And eventually we pulled into the parking lot of the mall off in this corner where there were no other cars around us. And we both just sat there, and it was like January 1st or January 2nd or something like that, because we moved here on December 31st. And we just kind of looked at each other and we went, man, I think I'm depressed. And that did not mean that we had clinical depression. What it meant was we were experiencing such a culture shock and such a change in our lives, and we needed time to adjust to it. And in those early days, we weren't happy. We didn't feel at home. We didn't know where anything was. We were still just very much fish out of water. And so that was a situation where we could say, yeah, right now I'm depressed. My mood is low. I don't care about anything. I'm not interested in anything. I don't want to eat anything. I just kind of want to just curl up in a ball and sleep. I don't really want to watch anything on TV or watch any movies. I'm just feeling depressed today. That's very different than if you are feeling that way, where you're not interested in anything. You don't want to connect with anyone. You just want to withdraw. You're not motivated to do work. You're not motivated to work out or take care of yourself. If that lasts for a longer period of time, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and beyond, even several months, then you may be experiencing clinical depression. Now, if you've been listening to my show or following anything that I put out there, you may know that I have a background in psychology. Please keep in mind, I am not a licensed clinical counselor. I'm no longer a therapist, no longer a counselor. So take what I'm saying as a signal flag that perhaps you need to talk to someone who is currently licensed and who is a professional to diagnose you with either depression, or maybe you're going through some kind of adjustment disorder. Maybe you're going through some kind of relationship conflict. Maybe there's something going on externally, or maybe there's something going on internally. No matter the case, seek help. This is really important. Now, depression, whether you're experiencing the clinical long-term version or a situational short-term version, usually depression is either fixed clinically, meaning antidepressants. It's either fixed therapeutically, meaning talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, ACT, that kind of thing, either group or individual, or, and this has been my experience because, again, if you've been listening to my history for a while, you know that I dealt with a very long period of PTSD and depression. For me, drugs didn't work, therapy didn't work. What did work for me was more of a spiritual intervention. And this isn't something where I had some guru come into my life or anything like that, but it was really that I needed to find my purpose. I needed to figure out, who the fuck am I? What am I doing here? What is life all about? That ultimately is what contextualized all of my life experiences, gave meaning to everything that I had been through, and really quickly lifted me out of my depression, because I had something to fight for. I had something to work towards. I had something to contribute to. And that deeper sense of purpose and mission is what lifted that veil of depression for me, even though my situation was very clinical. So I also say this in the context of, while there's a lot of merit to clinical and therapeutic interventions, and everyone is different, don't put yourself in a box and think that, oh, I'm going to have to be on drugs for the rest of my life, or, oh, I'm going to have to be in therapy for the rest of my life. There are other ways to get yourself out of that depression ravine. All right, now let's talk about the third possibility. So far we've talked about, what does burnout look like and how do we fix it? What does depression look like and how do we fix it? The other possibility, if you're feeling low and stagnant and unmotivated in your life in general or in your business, it might just be that you're doing unfulfilling work. Maybe you're not burnt out. Maybe you're not in that place where you need to actually press pause on everything that you're doing, take a step back and get very introspective and retrospective. But really what you're doing is just not lighting you up. This is a situation in which you're doing unfulfilling work. You're bored. This is where, when you're experiencing unfulfilling work, typically what happens is you're excited about new opportunities when they come, but you're bored with the work itself. You're not mentally stimulated and you're doing the wrong things in your business. Oftentimes, this happens when we think that we were supposed to be on one path, but really we're meant to take a hard left turn. Or when we are doing all the things in our business and we're getting to a point where it's time for us to stop doing all of it. And in fact, we've done so much learning and we've experienced so much that now we understand what we like, what we don't like, what challenges us, what stimulates us, what bores us, what frustrates us. And you need to start honing in on what you're really meant to be doing. So, for example, if you get really excited about the new opportunities, but you're not enjoying the work itself, but you're good at it and you've built a reputation for yourself and you want to continue running the business as you've currently created it, Well, then maybe it's time to think about expanding into an agency where you continue to be the face of your brand. You continue to do the sales and the opportunity creation and networking and putting together the proposals and all of that. But when it comes to doing the actual doing, whether that's writing or designing or photography or social media management or VA services, whatever the case may be, maybe that's when you need to start thinking about hiring someone to join you and start building a team to do the actual doing of the work while you do the chase and the exciting and front-facing parts of things. Alternatively, if you are really just not enjoying that part, the client acquisition and the sales and the proposals and the closing part of things, but you get really excited about doing the work, and maybe you're just unfulfilled by the fact that you have to do it all. Maybe that's when you should start thinking of partnering with agencies, because the agencies do all of that front end work and allow you to focus on doing what you do best, which is the actual creative work. Now, that's one possibility where you just need to kind of hone in on certain areas of your business. Another possibility is you've built the wrong business for yourself. If that's the case and you're just doing unfulfilling work, either you're not working with the right clients, you're not doing the right things, and this can be as granular as you are a freelance writer who is repeatedly getting projects about blogs and articles and things like that, but you're just not into it. Maybe you really should be doing more conversion-oriented copy. That's kind of that granular switch where you're staying within your role as a writer. You're just switching what you're doing, what you're creating, what you're actually writing. Another option is so actually I'll use a friend of mine as an example. I have a good friend of mine who we actually met within the Chiron community, who she has this amazing ability to tap into both halves of her brain. Most of us tend to be left-brained or right-brained. We kind of have a dominant side. She is very balanced. She's really good at the analytical kind of left brain side of things. And she's also really good at the creative side of things. She's also really good at the verbal and the visual. All of these things come together to form this almost infinitely open-ended list of possibilities of what she could be doing. Now, if you were someone like that, maybe you thought you should be a writer when really you should be a designer or a creative director or a project manager. Maybe you should be switching what it is you're actually doing. Now, this is usually fixed by stopping all of that unfulfilling work as soon as logistically possible, while working to discover what will fulfill you in the meantime. And you know that you're on the right track with this when you even just think about stopping doing the work that you're doing, you feel relief. If you think about, okay, I have 5 blogs on my list to write, of my agenda for the week to write, and you think about, God, wouldn't it be great if I didn't have to write those blogs and instead I did something else, and let your mind wander. If that thought brings you relief and you start to feel excited and motivated about the prospect of pivoting your business, just the idea, just the prospect, you don't even have to take any action yet. If that is what you experience that uplift, that resurgence of motivation, then that's your signal that you're on the right track. What you're struggling with is actually unfulfilling work and not necessarily burnout. Because if you're feeling burnout, you're not going to be motivated by anything. And if you're experiencing depression, you're not going to be motivated by anything. So those are typically the 3 situations we find ourselves in as creative entrepreneurs, particularly when we are starting to feel low, stagnant, unfulfilled, exhausted, just disinterested. So think about these 3 possibilities. Are you burnt out? Is it specific to your work and you just are dreaming all day long of taking a month-long vacation? Or is it depression? Are you feeling low and disinterested in not just work, but everything, your hobbies, your relationships, family? If so, then you might be dealing with depression. And you need to ask yourself, is this something that's been with me for a long time? And if so, you need to talk to a professional. Or is it unfulfilling work? You're still feeling that urge to move forward. You're still wanting to make progress. You just don't want to make progress on the next few steps that you've laid out in front of you. So what you really need to do is completely abandon those steps in a logical and, or I should say logistical and professional way. Of course, you don't just ghost your clients, but if you need to abandon, for example, blog writing, finish the projects that you're doing, or have a colleague come in and white label that person's work, have them complete the work, pay them either a portion or the full fee that you get from your client, depending on what's doable within your pricing structure. Get those projects done and off your list. Don't take on any more of that kind, and follow your energy. Follow what is tugging at you, what you're really actually interested in, because the thing that you started out with is not what fulfills you anymore. And that's perfectly okay. What's not okay is continuing to push forward, carrying the weight of any of these situations, burnout, depression, or unfulfilling work. All right. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. I hope it has helped you. And if you have any questions, or if you want to dive deeper into what it is that you're experiencing, if you are in a stuck or stagnant place, then reach out to me. You can email me at rairose, that's RAIROSE, at chironconsulting.us, CHIRON consulting.us, or join us in the Chiron community in Slack. Follow me on social media. Whatever you want to do that feels like you are not alone in this process anymore. I'm here for you if you need anything. Thanks for listening. Now soar. Hey, Ray here again. Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, please subscribe and rate us in your favorite podcasting platform. Want to be a guest on the show or know someone who has an amazing story of entrepreneurship? Apply on our website at chironconsulting.us/podcast.